Martial law. Two words that sound like a brand of energy drink, but taste more like cold metal and bad decisions. It's the moment you wake up, glance outside, and realize your neighborhood has been rebranded as a security zone. Soldiers where the dog walkers used to be. Trucks parked like they own the street because now they do. Loudspeakers barking instructions with the warmth of a parking ticket. And somewhere, a voice on the radio calmly announces that the normal order has been suspended, which is government speak for, your life just got picked up, shaken upside down, and whatever freedoms fell out are being stored in a locked cabinet labeled maybe later. This isn't a movie. In a movie, the hero gets a soundtrack and perfect lighting. In real life, you get fluorescent buzz, confused neighbors, and the unsettling realization that your daily routine was held together by invisible agreements. Under martial law, those agreements get replaced by uniforms and rifles and rules that change faster than app terms and conditions. It's basically a national hard reset. Except you didn't consent, you can't click decline, and customer support is a checkpoint with sandbag. So what does it look like, hour by hour, when martial law drops? First, movement becomes a privilege, not a default setting. Curfews show up like an unwanted house guest who eats your food and then tells you where to sit. Dusk to dawn is common. But sometimes the authorities decide the best time for you to exist is not at all, and you get near total lockdown. The message is simple. The streets belong to the state now, and you're just borrowing air. Get caught outside during restricted hours, and you're not just heading home. You're a person of interest, which is the kind of title nobody wants. Historically, once curfews hit, enforcement tends to be immediate and aggressive, partly because they're trying to make an example early, while everyone's still blinking in disbelief. And even when daylight returns, it doesn't bring freedom with it. It brings checkpoints, roadblocks, random stops, the kind of slow, grinding friction that turns a 10-minute errand into a 2-hour exercise in patience and compliance. You may need papers, passes, a reason, not a passionate reason. Not because I have rights. A boring reason. The kind of reason that makes you sound like an extra in a documentary. I am going to work. I am getting food. I am checking on my elderly relative. Martial law loves boring. Boring doesn't inspire crowds. At those checkpoints, the rules of personal space and privacy get put in a trash bag and left on the curb. Searches become casual, like asking for your name. Bags, cars, pockets sometimes, you too. And the old instinct to argue, to demand warrants, to quote laws, becomes less brave citizen and more volunteer for a bad afternoon. Under martial law, authority doesn't debate. It processes. It sorts. It detains. The goal isn't just to catch criminals. It's to remind everyone who's holding the steering wheel. The uncertainty is a feature, not a bug. If people don't know what's allowed, they choose the safest option, doing nothing. Then there's the uncomfortable truth nobody likes saying out loud. Homes stop being sacred. If the authorities believe they have a security reason, real, imagined, or politically convenient doors become suggestions. Some raids are targeted, others are random, which is a polite way of saying psychological pressure. When you can't predict whether tonight is quiet or chaotic, your nervous system never fully powers down. That's not accidental. A population that's exhausted and anxious is easier to control than a population that's rested and confident. Now add scarcity to the mix. If you thought modern society was fragile when it ran out of toilet paper for 5 minutes, martial law takes that fragility and puts combat boots on it. Supply chains get disrupted. Stores change hours or close entirely. Distribution can become centralized, guarded, and rationed. Fuel, medicine, food, anything essential becomes a managed resource. And managed resources come with rules. Sometimes you'll see soldiers overseeing lines, monitoring quantities, and deciding what fair means today. And hoarding becomes a magic word that turns your private pantry into a public issue. If authorities think you have too much, they can treat it like you're stealing from the collective. Even if you paid for it. Even if it's the only reason your family won't be hungry next week. There's also a special kind of cruel comedy that shows up in these moments. The way public safety somehow always includes banning whatever makes people feel human. Alcohol sales? Closed. Bars? Shut. Gatherings? Restricted. It's like the state takes one look at stressed out civilians and says, you know what would help? Less joy. Meanwhile, The people who love rules the most suddenly get promoted. The petty hall monitor energy rises like a toxic fog. Your neighbor, who used to complain about parking, is now intensely interested in who's coming and going from your house, because fear turns ordinary people into amateur surveillance. And if you were hoping the internet would keep you informed, welcome to the age of filtered reality. Under martial law, communication is often one of the first targets. Media gets controlled, censored, or replaced with official broadcasts that repeat the same calming phrases while everything burns behind the camera. In extreme cases, phone lines go down, internet access gets throttled, or entire platforms disappear overnight. The information environment becomes a walled garden, and the only flowers allowed are the ones that praise the wall. The result is propaganda fatigue. Your brain can only hear everything is under control so many times before it starts screaming back internally. Then why are there tanks near the bakery? This is where rumor takes over. Neighbors whisper. People trade scraps of "my cousin knows a guy," information like it's currency. Some of it will be true. Some of it will be panic dressed as certainty. If you're smart, you treat every unverified claim like it's contaminated water. Potentially useful, potentially harmful, and definitely not something you gulp down without thinking. Public gatherings become radioactive, protests get banned, meetings get broken up, sometimes even small clusters of friends talking, neighbors comparing notes draw attention, because in an environment built on control, unscripted human connection looks like a threat. The authorities don't need you plotting, they just need you thinking together. And thinking together is where control starts to slip. Speech gets sharper consequences too. Complaints that used to be harmless suddenly carry risk. Jokes that would have earned a laugh can earn you a visit. And here's the part modern society is not emotionally prepared for. Informants. Not movie-style spies, just scared people trying to protect themselves, or opportunists hunting rewards, or loyalists who mistake obedience for morality. Martial law doesn't just put soldiers on streets, it puts suspicion into living rooms. By this point, you're probably realizing the big theme. Martial law is less about solving a crisis and more about monopolizing the response to it. Rules shift. Hours change. Passes get redefined. One day you can travel with ID. The next day, you need an additional document, a stamp, a special reason, a special mood. The unpredictability grinds people down because it forces constant recalculation. Your brain burns energy just trying to stay inside the lines, and that leaves less energy for resistance, planning, or even hope. If all of this sounds like a nightmare, good. It should. Because the most dangerous part isn't the tanks or the curfews or the checkpoints. It's the psychological trap. The slow drift toward learned helplessness, where you stop believing your choices matter. That's when people stop preparing, stop adapting, stop thinking, because thinking feels pointless. And that's exactly why the next question matters more than all the scary details. If you woke up tomorrow and martial law had swallowed your city whole, what do you actually do to get through it without becoming a headline, a statistic, or a cautionary tale whispered in someone else's kitchen? First rule of surviving martial law: do not audition for the role of symbol. Symbols get photographed, tracked, and removed. You want the opposite. You want to be forgettable. You want to be the human equivalent of a beige wall. Because martial law isn't a courtroom drama where you make a speech and the system has a change of heart. It's a control environment, and control environments punish friction. So if your first instinct is to sprint outside yelling about freedom like you're the main character in a history montage, understand this. You might become a montage, but not the inspiring kind. The smartest move is to look compliant while you quietly stay capable. That means curfews are not suggestions, not guidelines, not "I'll risk it for snacks." If curfew is 8 p.m., you're home at 7. Not because you love rules, because you love having options. Under martial law, out after curfew can turn into detention, interrogation, or being labeled as someone who needs closer monitoring, even if you did nothing. Especially if you did nothing, because the whole point is that the state gets to decide what nothing means today. Next, become the gray man. Blend in. It sounds boring, and it is. That's why it works. No flashy clothes, no loud opinions in public, no dramatic gestures. No "I'm so calm and brave" energy either. If everyone looks tense, you look tense. If people are moving slowly, you move slowly. If the general mood is fear, You don't stroll around smiling like you just discovered inner peace. That kind of mismatch gets noticed. And being noticed is the first step toward being managed. This is also where your body language becomes a survival tool. Soldiers and militarized police don't read minds, but they read posture, eyes, hands, movement. You want to look predictable, hands visible. No sudden motions. No rummaging in your bag while someone is watching you like you might be the reason they don't get to go home tonight. When stopped, you respond like a bored civil servant. Calm, polite, short. Yes, sir. No, ma'am. You are not there to win. You are there to pass through the system without being flagged. And here's a piece of practical psychology that matters. When humans are stressed and armed, they become pattern hungry. They look for anomalies. Anything that feels off gets extra attention because it could be danger. So your goal is to be painfully normal. That's not cowardice, it's threat management. Think of it like walking past a sleeping bear. You don't poke it to prove you're morally right. Now, information. You still need it, because decisions without information are just expensive guesses. Under martial law, the official stream is often either sanitized, delayed, or designed to shape behavior more than inform. That doesn't mean everything official is false. It means you treat it like a press release during a corporate scandal. Potentially useful, definitely biased, and never the whole story. If you have ways to gather outside information in old radio, foreign broadcasts, offline contacts you, keep it quiet. Real quiet. The kind of quiet where you don't even let your mouth form the sentence in public. If you share sensitive information, you do it carefully and sparingly, and only with people you trust with your life. Because in a control environment, gossip becomes a weapon. People repeat things. People exaggerate. People mishear. And some people trade information for safety or favors. If you must talk, keep it vague, like speculation, not certainty. I heard a possibility is safer than I know. Certainty attracts attention. Uncertainty blends in. Trust becomes a tight circle. This is brutal, because community is usually what keeps people alive in disaster. But martial law poisons community with fear. Your neighbor might still be a good person. Your neighbor might also be terrified and looking for a shield. Or your neighbor might be the kind of person who treats authority like a personality. So you don't broadcast what you have, what you think, or what you're planning. You keep your inner world private. You don't need to live like a paranoid spy, but you do need to remember that desperate times rewrite people. Now let's talk logistics, because survival isn't a vibe. It's calories, hydration, medicine, and sleep. Under martial law, supplies can become inconsistent fast. Stores might open for short windows. Under supervision, deliveries might be delayed. Fuel might be restricted. Prices might spike. The first thing you do is inventory what you already have, not with panic, but with cold math. How many days of food? How much water? What medications are critical? What hygiene items do you run out of first? Most people don't starve quickly, but they do get stupid quickly when hungry, dehydrated, or sleep deprived. And stupid decisions under martial law carry heavier consequences than usual. If you have a stash, you do not advertise it. Not online, not to casual acquaintances, not to the cousin who can't keep a secret. You also don't keep everything in one obvious place, because if your home gets searched, or requisitioned, or inspected, the easiest stash to find is the one you built like a display. Think distribution, not hoarding. A little here, a little there. Some in plain sight as normal groceries, some more discreet. The goal is resilience, not a treasure chest. And rationing isn't just eat less, it's smart allocation. You prioritize energy-dense, shelf-stable foods. You avoid burning your best supplies early because anxiety made you snack like the apocalypse is a movie night. This is where modern habits betray people. We're trained to solve discomfort instantly. Hungry? Order. Bored? Scroll. Under martial law, you may not be able to solve discomfort. So you train yourself to tolerate it without spiraling. That tolerance is a skill. Movement is the next problem. Sometimes you can stay home, and that's often safest, but life doesn't pause neatly. Someone needs medicine. Someone needs checking on. You need supplies. If you must travel, you plan like you're crossing a hazardous zone because you are. You move only during permitted hours. You pick routes that avoid government buildings, security hubs, and areas where crowds form. Crowds attract enforcement. Enforcement attracts escalation. Escalation is where accidents happen, and under martial law, you don't want to be near accidents. At checkpoints, you prepare before you arrive. ID accessible. Permits ready if they exist. Bag organized. Nothing interesting on top. You do not want a search that turns into a discussion. You also keep your story simple and boring. Not emotional, not political, not clever. Work, food, family care. And you do not carry items that could be interpreted as resistance or suspicious, even if you're just being edgy. Under martial law, interpretation is power, and you don't control the interpretation. Here's a modern satire you should take seriously. Imagine a TikToker trying to prank a checkpoint. That person becomes a lesson for everyone else. Under normal times, stupidity mostly hurts pride. Under martial law, stupidity can hurt bodies. Social media has trained people to perform their lives for attention, but survival is about shrinking your profile, not growing it. Attention is not currency anymore, it's risk. Now, your daily routine needs to be rebuilt around safety and predictability. Under restriction, the brain craves structure because structure calms the nervous system. If your day becomes a shapeless blob of waiting and dread, your mind will eat itself. So you create a simple rhythm. Essential tasks during allowed windows, then low-profile activity at home, quiet exercise, cleaning, reading, skill practice, even small things maintaining equipment, organizing supplies give you a sense of agency. Agency matters because it counters that slow slide into helplessness. If you have kids, the difficulty level spikes. Kids don't understand why they can't run outside or talk loudly or ask questions at the wrong moment. You have to manage their fear without infecting them with yours. You turn silence into a game. You make routines that feel normal. You protect them from adult panic as much as possible, because panic is contagious, and children catch it instantly. And now the part nobody wants to talk about, because it sounds soft until you're living it. Mental survival. Martial law can trap people in a pressure cooker of fear, anger, boredom, and humiliation. That cocktail pushes people toward impulsive choices, so you build coping methods that don't attract attention. Dark humor with trusted family, quietly. Journaling, carefully hidden if it contains sensitive thoughts. Small rituals that remind you you're still a human being, not a unit in someone else's system. Also, watch your stress physiology. Chronic stress destroys judgment. It narrows your attention, makes you jumpy, increases conflict, and encourages short-term thinking. Simple skills help. Controlled breathing, deliberate slow movements, and rehearsing calm responses before you leave home. Not because it's trendy, because the ability to regulate your face and voice at a checkpoint can literally determine whether the interaction ends in seconds or spirals into a search and a detainment. Lastly, kindness. Not loud, kindness. Not performative kindness, quiet kindness. Sharing a little food discreetly with someone who's breaking. Checking on someone without making it a public event. Under martial law, cruelty can become normal if people accept it as just how things are now. Small private acts of decency keep your humanity intact. And if you lose that, even survival starts to feel like losing. Martial law doesn't last forever, but it can feel like it does while you're inside it. Rules will change, regimes will shift, emergencies will end, and eventually the boots stop echoing down your street. When that day comes, you want to step out of it with your loved ones alive, your mind still yours, and your future not permanently ruined by one stupid moment of pride. Because after weeks or months of being treated like a problem to be managed, the ability to walk to the store whenever you want, speak freely, and live without checkpoints will feel like the most luxurious thing you've ever tasted. Not freedom as an abstract idea. Freedom is a midnight snack run that doesn't require permission from a man with a rifle. Here's the dirty secret about martial law that nobody advertises on the official broadcast with the stern-faced general. The uniforms and vehicles are only half the threat. The other half is what it does to civilians' decision-making. People don't usually collapse because they ran out of heroism. They collapse because they ran out of sleep, ran out of patience, ran out of options, and then made one loud, impulsive choice in front of the wrong person at the wrong time. So the final phase of surviving martial law isn't about being tougher. It's about being steadier. Calm is a resource, and under heavy control, it becomes more valuable than batteries. That's why your mindset has to shift from, how do I beat this? To, how do I outlast this? Outlasting means you stop chasing certainty, because you won't get it. You build a simple internal process instead. Observe what's changing, orient yourself to the new pattern, decide what you can do today without creating risk. Act quietly, then repeat. It's not glamorous, but it's the difference between someone who adapts and someone who snaps. The modern world trains people to expect instant answers. Martial law is the opposite. It's long stretches of confusion punctuated by moments where you must be precise. Precision starts with paperwork and basics, because the most ridiculous way to get trapped in a control environment is by failing at admin. Keep your identification current. If permits exist, handle them like they're life support, not like they're annoying. Keep hard copies of essential documents in a safe place, because digital access isn't guaranteed when networks get restricted. Have a written list of emergency contacts and addresses, because it's amazing how quickly people forget phone numbers when adrenaline is running the show. None of this is paranoia. It's disaster readiness. When systems degrade, analog becomes luxury. Money works the same way. Under restrictions, electronic payments can become unreliable, or stores can become selective, or the rules can change overnight. Having a small cash reserve is boring, until it's not. Again, not because you're trying to be clever, but because you're trying to be functional. The goal is to reduce friction in a world that's designed to produce friction. The next layer is health. In most martial law scenarios, violence isn't what gets most people. It's the slower problems. Illness, infection, dehydration, chronic conditions that suddenly become harder to manage. If you or your family rely on medication, you prioritize continuity. If refills are possible, you handle them early, not when you're down to the last pill and the nearest clinic now has a line that wraps around the building. Hygiene becomes non-negotiable. When water is limited, people get sloppy, and that's when gastrointestinal illness spreads through households like a bad rumor. Clean hands, clean food surfaces, safe water practices, these are small disciplines that prevent big emergencies. The apocalypse is often just a stomach bug, with bad timing. Food matters too, but not just quantity. Under stress, people either stop eating or eat like every snack is their last. Both wreck your judgment. Your brain burns fuel under fear. If you don't feed it consistently, you get irritable, impulsive, and sloppy. The best survival diet in controlled conditions isn't glamorous. It's stable. Simple meals, regular times. Enough protein and calories to keep people thinking. Even a basic routine like eat at set hours helps regulate a household's mood. That's not lifestyle advice. That's operational stability. Now, the question everyone asks in whispers is, do I stay or do I leave? The answer is rarely heroic. It's situational. Leaving sounds romantic until you remember that travel under martial law is a funnel into checkpoints, scrutiny, and rule enforcement. Staying sounds safe until your area becomes a hotspot or services collapse. The right choice depends on what you actually know, not what you fear. If your home has supplies, relative safety, and a low profile, sheltering in place is often the most stable option. If your area becomes unstable, resources vanish, or you're at direct risk, relocation may become necessary. But if you relocate, you do it for a clear reason and with a clear plan. Not because panic told you movement equals control. Panicked movement is how people walk themselves into trouble. The best thing you can do is pre-decide your triggers. Not dramatic ones, like when society falls. Specific ones. If water stops for X days. If a medical need can't be met. If direct threats move into your immediate area. If trusted information confirms an escalation. Then you're not debating under adrenaline. You're executing a decision you already thought through. That's disaster response psychology in plain clothes. You reduce choices in the moment so you don't freeze or flail. Social behavior is another trap. Under martial law, the wrong social posture can get you targeted by either side of the tension. If you look too defiant, you attract enforcement. If you look too friendly with enforcement, you attract resentment. The safest posture is neutral competence. Respectful, not submissive. Quiet, not secretive. Helpful, not performative. You do not need to win any social points. You need to avoid being selected for anyone else's story. And yes, there will be people who try to turn the situation into content. There will always be someone filming themselves next to a checkpoint like it's a tourist attraction. There will always be someone posting hot takes because they can't survive a day without public attention. In a normal world, that's annoying. Under martial law, it's hazardous. You don't engage. You don't argue. You don't join the comments section in real life. You walk away and let the self-destructive learn what consequences feel like. Your survival plan does not include being the supporting character in someone else's bad idea. If you have to interact with armed personnel, your best tool is de-escalation. Not because you agree with the situation, but because you want the interaction to end. Short sentences, calm tone, no sarcasm. Save sarcasm for private spaces and trusted people, because sarcasm is a luxury that can be misread as disrespect. And disrespect, in a high-control environment, is gasoline. This is not about dignity. This is about outcome. Inside the home, you keep morale from collapsing. Stress makes people fight over nonsense. Under restrictions, tiny irritations can become massive because there's nowhere to release pressure. So you deliberately create pressure valves. Quiet humor, controlled routines, small tasks that give people purpose, moments of calm that don't depend on outside conditions. If you can keep your household functioning emotionally, you're already ahead of most people. Because group survival fails when relationships fail. Eventually, the control state loosens, either because the triggering crisis resolves, the political situation shifts, or the system can't sustain the pressure forever. When that happens, the temptation is to explode back into normal life like a shaken soda can. But the smart move is to transition carefully. Keep your good habits. Keep your situational awareness. Verify before you trust. Stability returns in layers, not all at once. And when you finally get that first ordinary day, again, no loudspeakers, no checkpoints, no sudden rules notice how strange it feels. You'll realize how much you adapted without noticing, how much your nervous system learned to live on edge. That's why the end of martial law isn't just relief, it's recovery. You don't just return to normal, you rebuild it. Because that's the last punchline in this whole dark comedy. Modern society sells the fantasy that stability is automatic. Martial law reminds you that stability is a negotiated condition. And when the negotiation ends, the real survival skill isn't strength or bravado. It's disciplined patience. It's staying boring when chaos wants you loud. It's keeping your family fed, calm, and intact, while the world outside tries to turn everyone into a problem to be managed. So if that switch ever flips and the law puts on a uniform, remember the goal. Not to be a hero, not to win an argument with a man holding authority and fear in the same hands. The goal is to make it through. With your mind still yours, your people still safe, and your future still available.